what perhaps are some of the preventers or the blockages to the fuller capacity for the human to weave part to part and connect possibilities. Before you got there, I was beginning to really get a sense through the weave that is appearing here of how indeed the human is a weaver inside. You were talking about the synapses in our brain and how the brain is this extraordinary universe that connect and weave part to parts, and therefore every time a new circuitry is formed, it opens a new possibility. So we are getting the sense through all the different experiences you're weaving, how the human is a weaver on the inside. And then also how the human is a weaver outside with other humans. And then thirdly, how through what Robin was saying and through what you are offering now, Kyriaki and Theodora and Alan, into technology, how there is the weave that occurs through time, through history. And how, if there is such a thing as evolutionary process, then one of the invisible propelling properties that enable that process to unfold is the human capacity to weave part to part, ever more complex and sophisticated. Hence the beauty of, Elizabeth, what you're describing. Even at the 10-year-olds, they begin to create the cosmology of meaning that enables them to process the world. This entire process of assimilating the world and our experience, that in itself is a weaving of part to part that bridges to possibility. So, Dina, what line would you want to bring into this? Because by design, this is a non-linear conversation. You can go anywhere you like.
That's right. I'm a composer. I compose music. And I teach music to other people, piano and guitar. And I was thinking of everything as a trace of weaving. I can't think of anything that's not really. Every genre of music has borrowed from another genre. And there's been a long line of handing down music as a legacy to the next generation for them to do with what they will because of what's moving through them. And I'm caught by the smallness of how catharsis happens. Because, for example, teaching a 10-year-old piano, how to play the piano. First of all, he wants to play the piano. Then there's some technology involved. There's the piano and these things called fingers, and the brain, the mind, the fish tank. Now, he's going to meet different parts of his technology. He meets the rhythm. He meets, it's actually not that easy to move your fingers around quickly. Tell them to do what you want them to do. It takes some practice. He's going to have to practice. These are technologies and philosophies, and he's going to meet different moods, different styles, a whole new lexicon of feelings and words, much of it in Italian, and dots and squigglies on a page that his brain's going to have to translate into meaning. It's quite, it's a process, and I don't know what the elements of the Greek tragedy are, but sometimes there's drama. And then the drama eases, and he hears his music teacher say, "Okay, what do you want to feel?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "Well, do you want to feel like what it was like with your cat when you went upstate last week?" He's like, "Yeah, I would like to feel that." And then all of a sudden his fingers can play that. Do you want to express your outrage that I will not let you bring the phone to the piano? Yes, I would like to express that outrage. And his fingers can express the outrage. And things move from what do you want to feel to what do you want to say. That's also a journey that I think it might be one of the reasons we weave different elements together, because we're looking for different spices, flavors, tools to be able to say what we want to say. So then I can say, "Okay, now what do you want to say?" And he can put that in the music.
So building on this from Dina and the experience of working with a child to access feelings and to weave and translate feelings into how the fingers will express those feelings on the piano. I want to ask you for this next round, because we touched now the big universe and history and big ideas and concepts. I want us to see if we can draw closer in to some of the things you possibly do every day, maybe in your crafts, maybe in other aspects of your work or endeavor, to bring the magnifying glass to the micro moments of life and describe some of what does it feel like, what does it appear like when you catch yourself up in the moment of weaving. And it may be weaving with your hands, and knitting or quilting or bridging or integrating, or it may be you working again with somebody else. What is it like when you enable this process, when you watch this process appearing, either on your own, weaving parts to parts, or enabling it in another?
Yeah, this is wonderful. When you were talking, Aviv, I was remembering a recent incident in my office. I work as a counselor, as I said, and I had a client who has been coming for quite some time, and she was really struggling with not liking herself, I think, is probably the deepest part of it. And I found myself always looking at her and thinking, as I do with just about every client I've seen, all I think is, you are so much better than you know. And because I could see the goodness from the outside. And it's been such a, as I've developed as a counselor, there's been so much that I've thought about what is in the way of somebody seeing how good they are, essentially. And one day, she was just furious at me and because of, transference and whatnot. And I'd never seen her so angry, and she literally threw her bag across the room. And it's kind of scared me. And so and then there was something else that happened, and I found myself getting irritated, defensive, something. I was like scared, and I was unsure what to do, and I was sort of irritated with her too, because she'd been quite stubborn about a bunch of things. And anyway, so I don't think I snapped, but I came back more forcefully than I would ordinarily. So she was even more angry. So then all of a sudden I realized, what was going on. Her anger part had triggered mine. And so I stopped, and she had gotten up, and then she sat down again. And I said, I am so sorry. I just got irritated. And she looked shocked. And I realized at that moment that no one had ever apologized to her. And we had a good talk afterwards. When she came in the next time, we had done a lot of talking about parts of ourselves, and I had encouraged her to locate them and so forth. And so she named this anger part Agnes. And from then on, we always talked about, it's Agnes here instead of you. And then, so she got to look at the part separate from her as a self. And then there was another part that she referred to as her ADHD part, her attention deficit part, and she named it Ida. Well, after that, I knew Agnes, the root meaning was fire, the god of fire. So I told her that later. She hadn't named her part that for that reason. And then I ran across a reference sometime after she named her distraction ADD part, Ida. I ran across that it has a Sanskrit root meaning chaos, the word Ida, I-D-A. So I came in and told her that next time. She was thrilled. And so ever since then, she'll say first before I do, oh, Ida's here, and talk. And as a result of this new way of talking, which is part of the way I work with people anyway, she is starting to reweave these parts of herself into a new whole. She sees herself differently now. And I have learned, I have been woven into that new setup, and we have a completely different relationship now than we did to begin with. And it's grown, since then because of trust and whatnot. But it just occurred to me that it's just a really, there's a stop situation that happens because we don't know our parts. And as we get to know our parts, we then can reweave them into a new self. And that is everything. And I think it goes across the board and analogously to every discipline.
Yeah, beautiful. So you're introducing really a whole new dimension to this conversation in the idea of weaving part to reintegrate ourselves, including the parts that we suppress or disown or work very hard to leave behind. And what you're describing is the moment we name them, reintegrate them, reweave them, see them as part of who we are, actually we disarm their power in waiting on the sideline, waiting to hijack the rest of us. So the teachable property in part of the counseling work that you do offers that in the reintegration of self, the different parts of self, there is a relief, there is healing, there is new possibility for self in appreciating and understanding oneself.